Today we've got a 2005 Ford F150. We're going to be doing a right front brake caliper. This particular truck has about 150,000 miles on it, and it's original equipment that's on there right now. So what we're going to be doing is pulling off the right front brake caliper, and we're going to show you how to put this new brake caliper back on and to bleed your brakes and get this thing back on the road. All right, we'll see you in a few. New brake caliper that we're doing on this 2005 Ford F150. You should get some new hardware with it. There's some new tins. We'll show you where those go on when you're putting your brake pads back on. There's a new banjo bolt in here and two new copper compression washers. You want to make sure that before you start this project that you do have a new bolt, new banjo bolt, and two new compression washers. That'll make sure that when you put this thing back on, that it's not going to be leaking and losing your brake fluid going down the road. All right, this is a pretty easy job. As you can see, we've already got the tire off and the rim off. Just make sure when you're, of course, doing this, when you jack up your vehicle for safety purposes, make sure you block your rear wheels with some chocks or some wood to make sure the thing's not rolling on you. And also make sure that you use jack stands to safely keep this thing up just in case your jack were to fail. So let's go ahead and get into replacing this front brake caliper. So let's go ahead and take a look at this 2005 Ford F150 right front brake caliper. We're going to try to get in here and let you see a little bit behind where our bolts are and where we're going to be disconnecting this. So this particular caliper that we have, the new one, we have a new bracket with it. So this whole piece, this top piece here, the bracket all the way across here, the whole caliper and everything is getting replaced. And right here is where your brake line comes in to this banjo bolt. So there is fluid in this line. So when you get ready here, you want to make sure you have some type of a receptacle underneath so that you can collect any fluid that's dripping out. Also, the brake line up here, you want to make sure that you don't put any stress on that. So when we're taking this off, there's some things that are clipped on here. You want to make sure that that you're not pulling any of that out. There's an ABS sensor that goes right along here, this wire. And again, just make sure we're not putting any undue stress on those brake lines. So the bolt we're going to be taking off, there's two of them right here on the back side. It's a little tough to see, but there's one here, and then there's one down at the bottom there. So let's take a look and see if we can't get that off now. So what you're going to need to get these off are you're going to need a 14 millimeter for this banjo bolt, and if you're taking the whole bracket assembly off, there are two 18 millimeters right here. And one thing that you'll note, just to give you a little more room coming in the back side here from this direction in with your tools, if you're using a air tools to take this off, you need a little bit more room coming in the back side here. So if you turn your wheels to the left, or I guess depends which side you're on, but in this case to the left, it creates some space back here so that you can get your tools in there and get your air gun in there and zip that off. So let's go ahead, we'll take this thing off and we'll see what this looks like. These bolts come out pretty easy with the right tool. I'm not going to take this all the way off until we go ahead and loosen this bolt here at least while the bracket and the caliper are still on there. So we'll just go ahead and kind of slide this bottom bolt back in here and give it a turn or two. Make sure that it stays sitting in there. All right, and then this top banjo bolt, we're just going to use a 14 millimeter on this. And basically, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm not taking it all the way off. I just want to give it a little bit of a turn there to loosen it. And okay, well next we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull this caliper off, and we're going to get some brake fluid dripping out of here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can get this banjo bolt off. We're going to get a little bit of fluid leaking out here. Try to stay out of this. So we'll go ahead and take this off. And there are two washers on here, two copper washers. So when you take this off, there's one on the top there, and there's one on the back side. So we definitely want to make sure we get those off. Probably going to need a screwdriver. So we do have a little bit of fluid dripping out there, which that's normal, so that's not a problem. Okay, let's go ahead and get these two washers off here. They're just kind of crush washers, so a little bit of corrosion on there. Up there went one, and on the back side is the other. So we'll make sure we clean that off so you can see both of those old washers. Do not reuse these. We've got new ones that came with our new part. So we'll set those aside here with the bolt. Now this should be ready to come off now. Again, there's a little fluid in that, and you can get a little dripping out of the line here. Okay, so we did get the brake caliper off. One thing too is it was a little bit frozen on. This caliper was sticking, so where it sat on here, we had to use a little persuasion. Just with the screwdriver and a small mallet and some tapping, we were able to get it to slide off there. Got the brake shoes out, and these are pretty new, so these weren't put on too long ago, so those are in good shape. So you've got both brake shoes, you got your bracket. We had some new metal tins; those sit right into these spots here. And basically, we're going to put a little bit of high temperature disc brake and wheel bearing grease. A couple of places where there's some movement. So we're going to put a little bit right in here on each of those tins where those brake shoe ears set. And make sure you keep this confined right to those spots. You don't want extra grease or any oil getting all on your brake pads themselves. Also, here around each of those cylinders, and on the back side where the brake shoe rests against this, we want to put a little bit of grease there. That basically just helps with some vibration, noise, keeping the noise down to a minimum with the vibration. So we will put a little bit on each of those, and a little bit on these three kind of legs sticking up here on the back side. You can put a little on the brake shoes, the pads themselves, if you want to. The only problem about that is if you start touching the back of those brake shoes pads, and then you touch the front side of it, you don't want to get that. So let's go ahead and put this back together here. So what we're going to do is set each of these in. Then the last thing to make sure, there's a couple of these little springs, tension springs. These help keep your shoes apart so they're not riding on the actual disc rotor. So we'll put those in there. And this assembly will basically sit right back into the caliper. And then we're going to go ahead and sit the whole thing on. So this will sit. And these, of course, have to go together. So again, you want to make sure get that slide right down in there. And then on this side, you can see there's where the bolt goes back in. So you can kind of get that in there. And same with this one here. So those sit right down in there, and you can kind of finger tighten those. And then we're going to torque those down. Once we actually get them on the pad, we'll go, or on the mounted, we'll go ahead and torque those down. These smaller ones go to either 47 or 48 foot-pounds, and the larger ones that hold the bracket on, I believe, are 148 foot-pounds. So you might want to check depending upon the year and make. But this is a 2005. I think the 2004 through the 2008s are all the same. But you want to check your torque specs on those and spec them to the manufacturer's specification. Okay, so here we've got the caliper. We've got the brakes set in there. We've got our high temp brake grease on, and we did go ahead and put these two bolts in finger tight for right now. And again, we're going to torque those down to the manufacturer specs. I think the use for this 2005 is 47 foot-pounds, and the large one that I'm holding there that holds the whole assembly and bracket and everything and caliper on is 148 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and slide these on and get our upper bolt. Just get a few threads in so that you know it's threading in there properly and not cross-threading. And I got my bottom one here. I'm going to get around. Again, same thing. That going in a few threads by hand. All right, now we're ready to tighten those down. So we'll go ahead and tighten those down to our manufacturer's specs. So again, we're going to go ahead and torque these to 148 foot-pounds, the large ones, and 48 on the small ones. There. Click. And here on this one, same thing. There we go. So that is definitely the worst part of it. So now we're going to have to go ahead and bleed the brake. So what you can see here is we've got our bleeder valve right here with a little rubber cover on it. So we'll take that off. We're going to need to get a wrench. I'll see what size. I think this might be a 10 millimeter, but we'll verify here in just a minute what size that is. We're going to go ahead and make sure this is cleaned off around here and get that back on with the new banjo bolt and our new copper crush washers. And here what we're going to do is make sure we put one washer on the top and slide that through and put our second washer on the back side and then seat that in. So it kind of tucks right in there, and we'll go ahead and that kind of finger tightened brake line. Okay, let's go ahead and get this banjo bolt tightened down. Manufacturer specs on this say 26 foot-pounds. So we got our 14 millimeter on the torque wrench. So we're going to go 26. And it should set in there and click. There we go, 26. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and bleed the brakes here in the next procedure. And make sure if you've got a dust cap on this, you get that off. And we'll get ready to bleed those brakes. Okay, so here we go. We've got a small tube. This just kind of helps. I flipped it onto my my pan at the bottom, collection pan, just to get any the extra runoff that's coming off when we're bleeding these brakes. We've got a 10 millimeter wrench here. So basically, right here's our bleeder. So if we go ahead and kind of get our wrench over top of that, can slide this hose on here like that. And basically, what we're going to do is we are going to loosen that, push on the brakes 3 times, and on the 3rd time, we're going to hold the brake down, let whatever fluid and air bubbles come out, and we're probably going to have to do this, I'm going to say maybe 3, 4, 5 times even with a new caliper like this, because it does have to fill up the caliper and the cylinders in there, the reservoir. And one thing you want to make sure is have some extra brake fluid on hand, and you can open your reservoir up on the top and go ahead and make sure you top that off. You don't want to be sucking any air or drawing any air down into your brake system, or you'll be rebleeding the thing all over again. All right, let's go ahead and we'll get some help out here and get somebody in the truck to help me out pumping those brakes. Okay, go ahead and pump 3 times. Okay, pump them again. Okay, pump them again. Okay, very good. Now it's all running clear. So we've got that tightened back down, and that ends bleeding our brakes. Okay, here we are. After a little extra challenges looking for a couple of tools that I needed, and with that brake caliper being frozen on that rotor, it took just a little bit longer. Basically, probably our total work time on this is about an hour and 45 minutes. I think if you've done it before and you weren't videotaping and tracking down tools, you can probably do this in maybe an hour to an hour and a half pretty easily. We'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. We're going to go out and take it for a test drive and see how the brakes are working, and we'll get this thing back on the road. All right, see you guys later.